Pet sitting seems like easy money. You stay in someone else's house for a few days, feed their cat, walk their dog, water their plants. The owners are on vacation, trusting you with their home and their beloved pets. It's a simple arrangement. What could go wrong? But sometimes the house you're staying in has secrets. Sometimes the pet you're caring for knows something you don't. And sometimes the homeowners didn't tell you everything before they left. Because if they had, you never would have agreed to stay. Tonight, I have 3 true horror stories from pet sitters who discovered that some houses should never be entered. Some pets should never be left alone. And some secrets are kept hidden for very good reasons. Because when you're alone in a stranger's house, miles from home, responsible for a frightened animal, that's when you're most vulnerable. That's when you realize you don't know this place. You don't know what happened here. And you don't know what's still here. This is Last Night FM. And tonight we're house sitting in hell. Megan Foster needed money. As a college junior struggling with tuition and rent, she'd taken various part-time jobs, retail, food service, tutoring. But when she saw an ad for a pet-sitting position paying $150 a day for 2 weeks, she jumped at the opportunity. $2,100 for basically living in a nice house and feeding a dog? It seemed too good to be true. The Morrison family interviewed Megan in October 2019 at their beautiful 2-story colonial home in suburban Connecticut. David and Patricia Morrison were in their late 40s, polite but seemed emotionally distant. They explained they'd be gone for 2 weeks on a cruise. Their golden retriever, Max, needed care. The job was simple. Feed Max twice a day, let him out, walk him and keep him company. Megan would stay in the guest bedroom. The pay would be $150 per day, cash. Megan met Max, a beautiful 3-year-old golden retriever who seemed friendly if a bit subdued. The Morrisons showed her around the house. Kitchen, living room, guest bedroom on the 1st floor. They didn't show her the 2nd floor. When Megan asked about it, Patricia's expression tightened. "We keep the upstairs closed. There's nothing up there you need. Everything Max needs is down here." Seemed odd, but Megan didn't push. Rich people had their quirks. She accepted the job. The Morrisons left on a Saturday morning. Megan moved in with her laptop and enough clothes for 2 weeks. The house was gorgeous. Hardwood floors, expensive furniture, large backyard. Max seemed happy to have company. Everything was perfect. Until that first night. Megan was watching TV in the living room around 10 p.m. Max was lying beside her on the couch. Suddenly, Max's head lifted. His ears went back. He was staring at the staircase leading to the 2nd floor. A low growl started in his throat. "What's wrong, boy?" Megan asked, looking toward the stairs. She saw nothing, just darkness at the top. The 2nd floor was completely dark. The Morrisons had left all those lights off. Max jumped off the couch and walked toward the stairs. He stopped at the bottom step, hackles raised, growling at the darkness above. Megan had never seen him act this way. He'd been so calm and friendly all day. "Max, come here," Megan called. Max ignored her. He stood rigid at the base of the stairs, staring upward, growling continuously. Megan got up and walked over to him. "What is it? What do you see?" She looked up the stairs. The 2nd floor was silent and dark. Nothing moved. Nothing was there. She tried to coax Max away, but he wouldn't budge. He stood there for 20 minutes, growling at the empty staircase, before finally returning to the living room. Even then, he kept glancing back at the stairs nervously. Megan told herself it was nothing. Dogs had weird instincts. Maybe he heard something outside. Maybe he didn't like the dark. She went to bed in the guest room and tried not to think about it. The 2nd day was normal. Max ate well, played in the yard, seemed like his usual self. But when evening came, the behavior started again. Around 9 p.m., Max walked to the base of the stairs and began growling, staring upward, refusing to move. This time, Megan decided to investigate. She turned on the staircase light and started walking up. Max barked frantically behind her. Sharp, alarmed barks, warning barks. Megan stopped halfway up. "It's okay, Max. I'm just looking." But Max's barking intensified. He was clearly distressed, clearly trying to warn her not to go up. Megan felt a chill run down her spine. The dog was terrified, genuinely terrified. She came back down. Max immediately calmed, though he kept watching the stairs. On the third night, Megan was lying in the guest bed reading around 11 p.m. Max was on the floor beside her bed. He'd refused to sleep anywhere else. The house was silent. Then Megan heard it. Footsteps, heavy footsteps, coming from directly above her. On the second floor, Megan froze. The footsteps were clear, distinct. Someone was walking up there, walking from one end of the house to the other. Slow, deliberate steps. Max heard it too. He jumped up, growling, staring at the ceiling. The footsteps continued. Walking, stopping, walking again. Megan's heart was pounding. She grabbed her phone. She was alone in this house. The Morrisons were on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. There was no one upstairs. There couldn't be. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Megan waited, barely breathing. Then they started again, walking back the other direction. Megan called the Morrisons' emergency number. Patricia answered on the third ring. She sounded groggy. "Hello, Mrs. Morrison, it's Megan. I'm so sorry to call, but I'm hearing footsteps upstairs. I think someone might be in the house." Silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. "Mrs. Morrison? There's no one in the house, Megan." Patricia's voice was strained. "Odd, but I can hear someone walking around up there, right now." Another pause. Then Patricia spoke quietly. "Megan, I need to tell you something. Something we should have mentioned before we left." Megan's stomach dropped. "Our son Tyler, he died 6 months ago, in his bedroom, upstairs." Megan felt the room spin. "What?" "It was an accident. He was 17. We found him in his room. We haven't been up there since. We keep the door closed. We can't go up there." "You're telling me there's a dead teenager's bedroom upstairs, and you didn't think to mention this?" Megan's voice was rising. "We didn't think it mattered. You were only supposed to stay downstairs. We thought." "You thought what? That I wouldn't notice your dog is terrified of the second floor? That I wouldn't hear the footsteps?" "Footsteps?" Patricia's voice changed, became sharper. "You're hearing footsteps?" "Yes, right now. Someone is walking around up there." Patricia was quiet. "Then Max knows. He was Tyler's dog. He was there when it happened. He hasn't gone upstairs since that day. He won't go near Tyler's room." The footsteps above stopped. The house fell silent. "What do you want me to do?" Megan asked, her voice shaking. "Nothing. Just stay downstairs. Don't go up there. It's just the house settling. Old houses make noises." "That wasn't the house settling. That was someone walking. There's no one there, Megan. I promise you, the house is empty." But Megan could hear something in Patricia's voice. Uncertainty, fear. Like Patricia wasn't entirely sure of what she was saying. Megan wanted to leave, wanted to grab her stuff and get out. But it was almost midnight. She had nowhere to go, and she needed the money desperately. "I'll stay tonight," Megan said. "But I want to know everything. What happened to Tyler? How did he die?" Patricia was crying now. Megan could hear it in her voice. "He hanged himself. In his bedroom. We found him the next morning. Max was in the room with him, just sitting there, staring. He hasn't been the same since. Megan felt sick. I'm so sorry, but you should have told me this. I know. I'm sorry. We just wanted to get away, to not think about it. We thought if we left the house it would be easier. We thought. The footsteps started again, louder this time, more deliberate, walking directly over Megan's room. I have to go, Megan said and hung up. She spent the rest of the night in the living room with all the lights on. Max pressed against her legs, both of them watching the staircase. The footsteps continued intermittently until dawn. Walking, stopping, walking, like someone was pacing, like someone was restless, like someone couldn't find peace. When morning came, Megan made a decision. She called the Morrisons and quit. She'd stay until they could find a replacement, but she wasn't sleeping there another night. She'd come during the day to feed Max and leave before dark. The Morrisons cut their cruise short and came home 3 days later. They paid Megan for the full 2 weeks anyway. Guilt money. Patricia apologized repeatedly. David said nothing, just looked broken. Megan later learned from a neighbor that the Morrisons sold the house 2 months later and moved to Florida. They couldn't live there anymore. Couldn't live with the memories. Couldn't live with whatever was walking upstairs in their dead son's room. Max went to live with Patricia's sister. The new family who bought the Morrison house lasted 6 months before they too moved out. They never explained why publicly, but Megan heard through local gossip that they'd reported strange sounds on the second floor. Footsteps, doors opening and closing, a sense of presence in one particular bedroom. The house stands empty now. No one wants to buy it. No one wants to live in a house where a teenager died and apparently never left, where a dog refuses to climb the stairs, where footsteps echo through empty rooms long after everyone is gone. Megan never pet sat again, never stayed in a stranger's house, because she learned that some houses hold onto their tragedies. Some deaths leave marks that can't be erased. And sometimes the pets know the truth long before the humans figure it out. Max knew. From that first night, Max knew something was upstairs. Something that shouldn't be there. Something that walked and paced and couldn't rest. And Max had tried to warn her, had tried to protect her the only way he could, by refusing to go anywhere near those stairs. Sarah Mitchell had been pet-sitting through an app for about 6 months when she got the booking request in August 2018. A couple named the Hendersons needed someone to watch their 2 cats for 10 days while they traveled to Europe. The pay was exceptional, $200 a day, $2,000 for 10 days of feeding cats. Sarah couldn't believe it. The Hendersons' house was in an upscale neighborhood in suburban Denver. When Sarah arrived for the initial meeting, she was impressed. The house was modern, beautifully decorated, clearly expensive. Margaret and Richard Henderson were in their 50s, friendly, professional. They showed Sarah around, introduced her to the cats, 2 sweet Siamese named Luna and Star, and explained the routine. We travel frequently for Richard's work, Margaret explained. We need someone reliable who can stay here and care for the cats. They're very attached to the house. We don't like to board them. The job seemed perfect. Sarah would have the entire house to herself. The cats were affectionate and easy. The pay was incredible. She accepted immediately. The Hendersons left on a Friday morning. Sarah moved in with her laptop and books. She planned to use the 10 days to catch up on freelance work and enjoy the luxury of a beautiful house. The master bedroom where she'd be sleeping was gorgeous. King-size bed, elegant furniture, a large ornate mirror on the wall opposite the bed. The first few days were wonderful. Sarah worked during the day, played with the cats, cooked in the Hendersons' high-end kitchen, and slept in comfort. Everything was perfect. But on the 4th night, Sarah woke around 3 a.m. with a strange feeling. She'd been dreaming that someone was watching her. When she opened her eyes in the darkness, that feeling didn't go away. She felt exposed, observed, like she wasn't alone. Sarah sat up in bed and looked around. The room was empty. The cats were downstairs. The house was silent, but the feeling persisted. She turned on the bedside lamp and examined the room carefully. That's when she really noticed the mirror. It was positioned oddly. Not on a wall where you'd naturally place a mirror for getting dressed or checking your appearance. It was mounted directly across from the bed, angled slightly downward, angled to capture the bed perfectly in its reflection. Sarah got up and walked closer to the mirror. It was old, ornate gold frame, beautiful craftsmanship, but something about it felt wrong. The glass seemed slightly different than a normal mirror, not quite as reflective, almost like it was tinted. Sarah touched the glass. It was cool, normal, but as she looked at it more carefully, she noticed something in the bottom corner of the frame. Tiny irregularity, a small hole, barely visible. Her heart started beating faster. Sarah grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it into that tiny hole. And that's when she saw it. A lens. A camera lens. Sarah stepped back, her mind racing. There was a camera in the mirror. A camera pointed directly at the bed. Her. She'd been sleeping in this room for 4 nights, changing clothes, showering and coming back in a towel, sleeping, and someone had been watching. With shaking hands, Sarah examined the mirror more carefully. She realized it wasn't a regular mirror. It was two-way glass. From this side, it looked like a mirror. But from the other side, from behind that glass, someone could see through clearly. And the camera was recording everything. Sarah felt violated. Sick. She pulled on clothes and started searching the rest of the house. She found cameras everywhere. Tiny cameras hidden in smoke detectors, air vents, picture frames. In the bathroom, in the shower, in the kitchen. The entire house was under surveillance. Sarah grabbed her things and ran to her car. She drove to a police station and reported everything. Officers took her statement seriously. They obtained a warrant and raided the Henderson house the next morning. What they found was worse than Sarah had imagined. The trip to Europe was fake. The Hendersons were in a hotel 30 miles away with laptops, watching live feeds from the cameras in their house. They'd been streaming Sarah's every move, recording it, and they'd been doing this for years. Police found hard drives with footage from dozens of previous pet sitters. All young women, all filmed without their knowledge. The Hendersons would hire women through the pet-sitting app, pay them extremely well, and watch them live in the house. The cats were real, but they weren't the point. The cats were bait to get women to stay in the house for extended periods. The Hendersons had been selling some of the footage online, making money from voyeuristic videos of women who had no idea they were being filmed. Showering, changing, sleeping, all of it cataloged and sold to people who paid for this kind of content. When police arrested the Hendersons, they showed no remorse. Richard claimed they weren't doing anything illegal because it was their house and they had a right to put cameras in it. His lawyer argued the women had agreed to stay in the house and therefore consented to being on the property where cameras happened to be. But the law was clear. Hidden cameras in bedrooms and bathrooms where people had a reasonable expectation of privacy were illegal. Recording people without their knowledge for sexual gratification or commercial exploitation was illegal. The Hendersons were charged with multiple counts of invasion of privacy, voyeurism, and distribution of intimate images without consent. Sarah had to testify at their trial. It was humiliating, having to explain how violated she felt, having to know that strangers had watched her in her most private moments, having to learn that footage of her had been sold online and might still be out there. The Hendersons were convicted and sentenced to 8 years each. but the damage was done. Sarah struggled with anxiety and trust issues for years. She couldn't stay in hotels without checking for cameras. Couldn't use changing rooms without paranoia. The violation had fundamentally changed how she moved through the world. The pet-sitting app banned the Hendersons and added new verification processes. But Sarah knew there were others out there. Other people using seemingly innocent services to exploit young women. Other houses with hidden cameras. Other couples watching and recording and profiting from violation. Sarah never pet-sat again. Never stayed in a stranger's house. Never trusted that a beautiful home and friendly owners and generous pay weren't hiding something sinister. Because she'd learned that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like a nice middle-aged couple who love their cats. Sometimes they smile and shake your hand and pay you well. And sometimes they watch you sleep and sell the footage to perverts online. The cats, Luna and Star, were rehomed to a family who genuinely loved them. They never knew they'd been accessories to years of exploitation. Never knew their need for care had been weaponized to lure victims. But Sarah knew, and she'd never forget. Never forget the feeling of realizing she'd been watched. Never forget seeing that camera lens in the mirror. Never forget that somewhere, footage of her most private moments might still exist, being watched by strangers, forever. James Cooper found the pet-sitting job on a local community board in March 2020. A family needed someone to watch their rescue dog, Bailey, for 1 week while they dealt with a family emergency out of state. The pay was good, $100 a day, plus he could stay in their house rent-free, which was perfect since James was between apartments. The Carver family seemed normal when James met them. Frank and Denise Carver, late 30s, seemed stressed and in a hurry. They had a 3-year-old German Shepherd mix named Bailey who they explained was a rescue with anxiety issues. "She's very nervous," Denise explained, kneeling to pet Bailey. "She's been through trauma before we got her. She startles easily. Sometimes she has panic attacks. Just be patient with her." Frank showed James around the house. Kitchen, living room, guest bedroom, backyard. Then they came to a door in the hallway. A door with a heavy deadbolt lock. "This is the basement," Frank said. "It's just storage. Old furniture. Holiday decorations. Nothing you need to access. We keep it locked." "Okay," James said. "Do you want me to do anything down there? Anything I should check?" "No," Frank said quickly. Too quickly. "Just leave it locked. Bailey gets anxious around that door. Just ignore it." James thought it was odd but agreed. They gave him keys to the house, showed him where Bailey's food and medication were, and left within the hour. Bailey seemed like a sweet dog, if nervous. She followed James everywhere, always staying close, watching him with anxious eyes. She ate well and seemed comfortable with James. Everything was fine, until that first evening, when Bailey started acting strange around the basement door. James was making dinner in the kitchen when he heard scratching. He walked into the hallway and found Bailey at the basement door, pawing at it frantically, whining. "Hey girl, what's wrong?" James approached her. Bailey looked at him, whined louder, then went back to scratching at the door. Her behavior was frantic, desperate. James tried to lead her away, but she wouldn't budge. She scratched harder, whining continuously, occasionally barking at the door. "There's nothing down there, Bailey. Just storage. Come on." But Bailey seemed convinced something was behind that door. Something she needed to get to, or something she was terrified of. James couldn't tell which. This behavior continued every day. Bailey would spend hours at that basement door, scratching, whining, crying. James would try to distract her with walks, with toys, with treats. Nothing worked. She'd always go back to that door. On the 5th night, James was lying in bed around midnight when he heard Bailey barking frantically. He got up and found her at the basement door again, but this time her behavior was different. She wasn't scratching. She was backing away from the door, barking aggressively, hackles raised. James approached the door and listened. First, he heard nothing. Then he heard it, scratching. From the other side of the door, something was scratching on the basement side, trying to get out. James's blood ran cold. The Carvers had said the basement was just storage. But this sounded like something alive, something trapped. He put his ear against the door. The scratching continued, and then he heard something else, a sound that might have been a voice, muffled, weak, like someone trying to speak but unable to. James pulled out his phone and called Frank Carver. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. James tried Denise. Same result. Voicemail. The scratching continued. Bailey was still barking, terrified. James tried the Carvers again. This time Frank answered. "Hello." He sounded annoyed. "Mr. Carver, it's James. I need to ask you something. What's actually in your basement?" Silence. "Mr. Carver? I told you. Storage." "Why?" "Because I'm hearing something down there. Scratching. It sounds like something alive." More silence. Then Frank's voice, cold. "You're hearing things. The house is old. Pipes make noise. Just ignore it." "This isn't pipes. This sounds like..." "I said ignore it." Frank's voice was hard now, threatening. "You're being paid to watch the dog, not to investigate my house. Stay out of the basement." The line went dead. James stared at his phone. That response was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. If there was really just storage in the basement, Frank would have been concerned, would have wanted to investigate. Instead, he'd gotten angry and defensive. James tried calling back. Neither Frank nor Denise answered. The scratching from the basement was getting louder, more desperate, and that muffled sound. James was now certain it was a voice. Someone was down there. Someone was trapped in that basement. James called 911. "I'm pet sitting at a house and I think someone might be trapped in the basement. The owners told me never to go down there, but I'm hearing sounds. Scratching. A voice. Something's wrong." The dispatcher took the address and said officers were on the way. Police arrived within 15 minutes. James explained everything. The locked basement door, the Carver's strange reaction, the sounds, Bailey's behavior. Officers knocked on the basement door, called out. The scratching stopped. Everything went silent. "We're going to need to break this down," one officer said. "Unless you have a key?" James shook his head. "The Carvers didn't give me one." 2 officers broke down the door. The lock shattered. The door swung open. The smell that came out was horrific. Decay. Human waste. Fear. Officers descended the stairs with flashlights and weapons drawn. James waited at the top with Bailey. The dog was shaking violently. What police found in that basement would lead to the Carvers' immediate arrest warrant and a multi-state manhunt. A woman, chained in the basement. She'd been there for weeks, starving, dehydrated, traumatized beyond measure. She was alive barely. The woman's name was Michelle Porter. She'd gone missing 6 weeks earlier from a town in Kansas. The Carvers had abducted her, brought her to this house, and kept her prisoner in the basement. Bailey, the rescue dog, had witnessed it, had been in the house when Michelle was brought in, had heard her screaming, had tried to help the only way she knew how, by scratching at the door, by alerting anyone who'd listen. The Carvers were found 3 days later trying to cross into Mexico. They were extradited and charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and attempted murder. During the investigation, police discovered this wasn't their first victim. They found evidence suggesting 2 other women had been kept in that basement over the past 3 years. Women who hadn't survived. James had to testify about what he'd heard, about Bailey's behavior, about the Carvers' threatening response when he'd called them. His testimony helped convict them. Michelle survived physically but was permanently scarred psychologically. She credited James with saving her life. If he'd listened to the Carvers, if he'd ignored the sounds, if he'd dismissed Bailey's behavior, Michelle would have died in that basement. Bailey was placed with a specialist who worked with traumatized animals. She slowly recovered, though she never lost her fear of basements or locked doors. She'd seen too much, knew too much. James never pet sat again, never stayed in a stranger's house, never trusted that a locked door was just hiding storage, because he'd learned that some families have terrible secrets. Some basements hold horrors, and sometimes a rescue dog is trying desperately to rescue someone else. The Carvers are serving life sentences without parole. Their house was demolished. Nobody wanted to live in a place where such evil had occurred, where a woman had been tortured in the basement while pet sitters lived upstairs, completely unaware. But James still thinks about it, about how close he came to ignoring those sounds, about how easily he could have dismissed Bailey's behavior as just anxiety, about how Michelle Porter would be another missing person who was never found if he hadn't trusted his instincts. And he thinks about Bailey, about how she'd tried to tell him from the beginning, about how she'd scratched at that door for days, begging someone to listen, about how she'd known someone needed help and couldn't give up until someone understood. Sometimes the pets know. Sometimes they're trying to tell you something, and sometimes listening to them can save a life. 3 pet-sitting jobs, 3 houses hiding horrors, a dog that knew death walked upstairs, a couple who filmed women for profit, and a basement where a woman was chained while life continued above. When you're alone in a stranger's house, you're surrounded by their secrets, and some secrets are deadly. Trust the animals. They know more than we think. And trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. This has been Last Night FM.